Washington couple vanished camping 4 years later. A disturbing discovery is made. Before we dive in, I want to be clear that the story you're about to hear is a fictionalized narrative. The specific case of Evan and Marissa Cole is a constructed story. It's designed to explore the very real complexities and emotional toll of a long-term cold case. Disappearances in the vast wilderness of the Pacific Northwest are a tragic reality for many families. This story is meant to honor the spirit of the investigators who refuse to give up and the families who never stop hoping. Think of it as a look into the anatomy of a mystery and the kind of chilling discovery that can change everything in a heartbeat. In the summer of 2019, a young couple named Evan and Marissa Cole drove their truck into the deep green labyrinth of Washington's Cascade Range. They were looking for a weekend of peace under the stars, full of life and with a future that seemed totally limitless. But they never came back. Their truck was found abandoned at a remote trailhead, their campsite left in a state of bizarre disarray. For 4 long, quiet years, the forest kept its secrets, and the case went cold, becoming a ghost story whispered among locals. But what investigators would eventually find wasn't just a clue. It was a horror that unraveled a truth far darker than anyone could have ever imagined. So what really happened to Evan and Marissa Cole? The answer starts on a lonely mountain road, with a choice that sealed their fate. Section 1. The Last Trip. Friends would tell you that Evan Cole, 28, was a steady hand. He was a carpenter, a man who liked building things that last. He was quiet, with a calm presence that made people feel at ease. His real passion, though, was the outdoors. He'd grown up in the shadow of the Cascades, and their rugged trails were like the back of his hand. For Evan, nature wasn't just an escape. It was where he felt most at home. Marissa, 26, was his perfect match. If Evan was the quiet earth, she was a vibrant fire. She was a graphic designer with a laugh you couldn't help but join in on. She was creative, ambitious, and completely in love with the man who grounded her. They'd been together for 5 years after meeting in college and were saving up to buy their first house just outside Seattle. They also had 2 rescue dogs, a big, happy golden retriever named Gus and a scruffy terrier mix called Pip, who were basically their kids. Their life was made up of simple joys, weekend hikes, evenings sketching designs for their dream home, and long drives with the windows rolled down, singing badly to the radio. The camping trip in the summer of 2019 was supposed to be another one of those moments. It was a celebration for a promotion Marissa just got, and a chance for Evan to unplug. They picked a remote spot deep in the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest that they'd never been to before, recommended by one of Evan's co-workers for its isolation. They were experienced campers. They had all the right gear, and they knew the risks. They felt safe. On a warm Friday morning, they packed up their Ford F-150, tent, sleeping bags, a cooler full of food, and of course, Gus and Pip, who were tearing around the truck with excitement. Friends who talked to them that day said you could feel how excited they were. It was going to be a perfect weekend. The drive took several hours, leaving the Seattle suburbs behind for the wild heart of the mountains. In a text to her sister, Marissa mentioned they'd had a small argument on the way, something silly, about a turn or what music to play. It was the kind of bickering every couple does, forgotten as soon as it started. Her later texts were full of pictures of the towering trees. No one who knew them, from their family to the investigators who later picked apart these messages, thought the argument was anything serious. They were last seen that Friday afternoon at a gas station about 30 miles from the trailhead. The attendant later remembered Evan buying ice and a map, and Marissa laughing as she chased Pip on a patch of grass. He said they seemed happy, relaxed, totally normal. They paid in cash, got back in their truck, and drove east into the wilderness. It was the last time anyone saw them. The plan was to be back Sunday evening. When Monday morning came and Marissa didn't show up for work, her boss figured she might have taken an extra day off. But when Evan also missed his shift, a little flicker of worry started. By Monday night, after dozens of calls and texts from both families went unanswered, that flicker was a full-blown fire. Marissa's parents called the police and reported them missing. The problem was the sheer size of the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. It covers more than 1.7 million acres. They'd told friends the general area, but not the exact spot. It took a full day before a sheriff's deputy found their truck parked at the entrance to an old and used logging road. The truck was locked. Right there in plain sight were Marissa's purse and Evan's wallet. Their phones were there, too. They often left them behind to disconnect. Right away, that was a red flag. Their wallets and IDs were still in the truck. If you just got lost on a hike, why would you leave your money and identification behind? It felt like they planned on staying close. A search and rescue team was sent in immediately. They walked about a mile down the overgrown road before they found it, the campsite. And what they saw was deeply unsettling. It was like a photograph of an interrupted life. 2 camping chairs faced a cold fire pit. On a picnic table were plates of uneaten sandwiches and a bag of chips. A half-empty bottle of wine stood between them. It looked like they sat down for lunch and just vanished. The most disturbing part was the tent. It was a big, heavy-duty canvas tent. A long, clean slash was cut right down the side, from top to bottom. It wasn't a jagged tear like an animal would make. It was a straight, deliberate cut. Next to the opening, a hatchet, their hatchet, lay on the ground. It was clean. Inside the tent, their sleeping bags were laid out, looking like they hadn't even been used. Investigators swarmed the area. They found the truck keys lying in the dirt by the fire pit, as if they'd just been dropped. But there were no signs of a struggle. No extra footprints, no other tire tracks. They did find a few small, dark stains on the ground near the tent. The samples were rushed for analysis, but that hope for a clue led to another dead end. The blood was from a deer. Maybe Evan had been hunting, but he wasn't a hunter, and they didn't have a rifle. The deer blood just made everything stranger. And then there was the most heartbreaking piece of the puzzle. Gus and Pip, their dogs, were gone too. There was no way Evan and Marissa would have left their dogs behind. It also seemed impossible that 2 dogs, one a large retriever, could be taken without making a sound. The silence of the scene was what made it so terrifying. There was no evidence of a fight, an animal attack, or a robbery. There was just nothing. A young couple and their 2 dogs had been erased from their own lives, leaving behind a perfectly preserved, yet violently damaged, snapshot of their last peaceful moments. Section 2. 4 years of silence. In the weeks that followed, a massive search kicked off, one of the biggest in recent state history. Teams from multiple counties came in. Volunteers on foot, on horseback, and on ATVs combed the dense forest. Drones with thermal cameras flew overhead, while helicopters scanned the rough terrain. 9 units were brought in, but every time they picked up the couple's scent, the trail went cold a few hundred yards from the camp, right at the edge of a fast-moving creek. It was as if they had walked to the water and simply disappeared. Investigators were stuck with a few frustrating theories. First, the obvious one, they got lost. Maybe they took a wrong turn on a hike and the elements got them. It happens all the time in the Cascades. But it just didn't fit the scene. Why slash the tent? Why leave food out? And why would 2 experienced campers wander off without basic supplies? Their hiking boots were still in the tent. The second theory was a wild animal attack. The area has bears and cougars. That could explain the slash in the tent and the missing dogs. But wildlife experts disagreed. A bear attack is messy and violent. The campsite would have been torn apart. Food would be everywhere, and there would be clear signs of a fight: blood, torn clothes. There was none of that. The scene was almost sterile. That clean cut in the tent looked like it was made by a human with a blade, not the claws of an animal. Then there was the idea that they ran away. Maybe that argument in the car wasn't so small after all. But their family shot that down immediately. Evan and Marissa were happy. They were saving for a house, and Marissa was excited about her promotion. They loved their families and their dogs. The idea that they would stage this bizarre scene and abandon everyone was just unbelievable. Besides, their bank accounts were never touched. Their credit cards were never used. It's nearly impossible to just vanish and start a new life without leaving some kind of financial trail. That left investigators with the most chilling theory: foul play. They were taken by a stranger. This could explain the slashed tent, a way to scare them or get in. It could explain why there wasn't a struggle if they were taken at gunpoint. But it also left a huge void of evidence. There was no ransom note, no motive, no suspect. It felt like they were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, victims of a phantom who slipped in, did something terrible, and vanished back into the woods without a trace. As months became a year, the official search was scaled back. The case moved to the cold case unit. For the families, the silence was agonizing. Hope can be a cruel thing when you have no answers. Every phone call, every knock on the door, was a jolt of adrenaline that always ended in disappointment. They organized their own searches and plastered missing person flyers all over the Pacific Northwest. Marissa's sister started a social media page for the search, which became a hub for amateur detectives. People threw out wild theories: a drug deal gone wrong, a paranormal event. Each one was a fresh stab of pain for the family. The case became local folklore, a cautionary tale for hikers about the vanished couple of the Cascades. For the lead detective, Sergeant Bill Crawford, it became a personal obsession. He'd drive up to the area on weekends, walk the same overgrown road, and just stare at the spot where the tent had been, as if the trees might finally tell him something. The slashed tent, the uneaten food, the deer blood, the keys in the dirt, the missing dogs. It was a puzzle with too many pieces missing. 2 years passed, then 3. The world kept moving. But for the families, time stopped in the summer of 2019. The missing posters faded. The social media page went quiet. The silence from the forest felt final. It seemed like the woods would keep its secrets forever. But in another part of the state, a completely unrelated investigation was about to stumble onto a thread. And when they pulled it, the whole horrifying story of what happened to Evan and Marissa Cole would begin to unravel. The commitment of investigators and families is what so often drives these cold cases toward an answer. If you find these kinds of intricate mysteries as compelling as I do, and you want to see more stories of justice and the search for truth, think about subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell. Your support helps us keep telling these important stories. And now, let's get back to the discovery that changed everything. Section 3. The crack in the case. For years after Evan and Marissa disappeared, the case finally cracked. It happened over 100 miles from the campsite, in a dusty corner of Snohomish County. It wasn't a hiker who found something or a dramatic confession. It started with a routine investigation into stolen construction equipment. Detectives were closing in on a small-time criminal named Joshua West. West was 45, with a long rap sheet for minor stuff: theft, possession, fraud, but nothing violent. He lived off the grid and was part of a crew that ran insurance scams. After weeks of surveillance, detectives got a warrant to search his property, a few muddy acres cluttered with rusted cars and junk. They found the stolen equipment they were looking for, But they also found something else. Hidden under a moldy tarp behind a collapsing barn was a huge, industrial-grade wood chipper. It was old and rusted, but it had clearly been used. There was something about it that just felt wrong. On a hunch, they impounded it. The forensics team at the state crime lab got the grim task of taking it apart. Deep inside the machinery, they found tiny fragments of bone and a single chipped tooth. They ran the DNA through the National Missing Persons database. They were expecting a match to a local case, but the result that came back shocked them. The DNA didn't belong to Evan or Marissa. It belonged to another man, Rorick Johnson, a business owner from Oregon who had vanished a year before them under similar mysterious circumstances. His case was also ice cold. Finding his remains in Westwood, Chipper turned West from a thief into a prime murder suspect. Sergeant Bill Crawford, the detective who never let the Cole case go, heard about the find. As soon as he heard Wood Chipper, a cold dread hit him. It was a terrifyingly efficient way to make a body disappear. He immediately called the detectives in Snohomish County and asked them one question. Did you find anything else on the property? They had. In a toolbox in one of the outbuildings, buried under some greasy rags, they'd found a stash of personal items, jewelry, watches, a few driver's licenses. It was a killer's trophy box. Sergeant Crawford drove the 100 miles to their office, his heart pounding. He brought the detailed list of Evan and Marissa's belongings. He sat with another detective, going through the box. And then they found it. A simple silver necklace with a small, hand-stamped charm of a mountain range. It was a custom piece Evan had given Marissa for her birthday, just a month before they disappeared. Marissa's sister had given them a photo of it. It was a perfect match. After 4 years of nothing, they finally had a direct link between the missing couple and a murder suspect. This discovery blew the case wide open. Joshua West, now looking at 2 murder charges, wasn't talking. But investigators dug into his life. They learned he was more than a petty thief. He was a cleaner for a criminal ring that specialized in insurance fraud. They'd stage accidents with heavy machinery, collect the insurance, and have West get rid of the equipment. But sometimes, witnesses popped up. Investigators started putting together a new theory. They looked again at the location of Evan and Marissa's campsite. That remote logging road, they found out, was sometimes used by West's crew to move stolen gear through the mountains, off the main highways. A new, terrifying timeline started to take shape. Evan and Marissa, looking for solitude, had accidentally set up their camp right in the middle of a criminal travel route. Maybe late that Friday night, they saw something they shouldn't have. A truck with stolen machinery. A secret meeting. Evan, being protective, might have gone to check it out. Or maybe West and an associate just stumbled upon their camp. Suddenly, the scene made a horrible kind of sense. The slashed tent wasn't random. It was a way to control them. The missing dogs weren't a mystery. They were a liability that had to be silenced first. The food on the table told the story of a peaceful moment shattered by the arrival of pure evil. There was no fight at the campsite because they never had a chance. They were likely taken at gunpoint and forced into a vehicle, leaving that quiet, eerie scene behind. The deer blood was re-examined. West was a known poacher. It was possible the blood dripped from his own gear. The keys in the dirt could have been dropped during the abduction. All the strange details finally clicked into place when seen through the lens of Joshua West. Investigators now believe that Rorick Johnson, the man in the wood chipper, had also witnessed one of their crimes a year earlier. And they were certain Evan and Marissa had met the same fate. They were taken somewhere remote, murdered, and then, in the most sickening act of all, their bodies were destroyed in that rusted machine, erased in an attempt to commit the perfect crime. The search for Evan and Marissa's remains began again, this time with a grim purpose. Forensics teams went over West's property, digging and sifting through the soil, hoping to find another bone fragment, another tooth, anything that could give their families a final, definitive answer. They knew the chances were slim. The forest hadn't been hiding the secret. A monster had tried to grind it into dust. The discovery of the necklace connected to Joshua West ended 4 years of silence. But it started a new kind of pain for the families of Evan and Marissa Cole. The awful uncertainty of not knowing was replaced by the brutal reality of a murder investigation. That tiny flicker of hope that they might one day just walk out of the woods was gone, replaced by the horrific image of their final moments. The case against Joshua West is still ongoing. He remains the prime suspect, the dark center of a criminal web that accidentally caught a young couple who just wanted a quiet weekend away. For the families, there is no happy ending, no closure that can bring back what they lost. All they can hope for now is justice. Justice for two bright, loving people who went into the woods and never came out. The story of Evan and Marissa is a chilling reminder of how fragile life can be and how random fate is. It shows that even in the most beautiful places, darkness can be waiting just off the trail. Their story didn't end at that silent campsite. It ended on a desolate piece of land, at the hands of a man who thought he could erase people from existence. But he couldn't erase their memory. He couldn't erase the love they shared. And he couldn't erase the tireless dedication of the investigators who refused to let the silence win. And it leaves you with a haunting question. How many other secrets are still out there, buried in the dirt, hidden under a tarp, just waiting for one lucky break, for one determined detective to finally bring them into the light? What you think about this story? Write in the comment your opinion. On my channel, you can watch other revenge or cheating stories. See you soon, my dear viewer.